My name is Kirstine Stephen, and I'm an assistive technology and additional support needs teacher at Call Scotland. I'm delighted to be joined today by David Lester from Quillsoft. Good afternoon, David. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invite.
David has worked in the wider service sector for nearly 30 years, with the last 15 of those focusing on education and supporting schools, government teams, and parents internationally. In his joint roles of Group Learning Services Director at Nisai and Vice President at Quillsoft, David brings with him a real wealth of knowledge and experience of the challenges faced in the UK and international education and the special educational needs sector. Today, David is going to be talking to us about the functionality of the latest version of WordQ. For anyone not familiar with WordQ, it is software for word prediction, speech feedback, and PDF editing. Today's session is being recorded. Thank you, Robert, who's in the background there, keeping an eye on everything technical for us. We know that we have lots of people joining us from right across the globe, and due to time zones, lots of people will be watching this on catch up. So everybody is very welcome this afternoon. I would ask you, please keep your mics on mute. And if you don't wish to be part of the recording, then you might want to just pop your camera off now. The webinar is going to run today for approximately 20 minutes. And David will then be available to take questions, but if you have any as he's going, please feel free to pop them in the chat pane and we'll come to them at the end. So I'll now hand over to David. Thanks, David.
Thanks for the introduction. So as Kirstine explained, I'm going to be talking about WordQ, how it supports reading, writing, and improves user well-being, and I think that's a key element. But just before we go into the nuts and bolts of it, I just wanted to add a bit of context. So as it was explained, I hold two roles. One is Group Learning Services Director for Nisai, who people in the UK may well have heard of. We support learners with SEN, and we've been providing online education for those who struggle to get into school since 1996. We're also involved with and support units of sound for anyone who's used that. My role with Quillsoft is very much around assistive technology and the way software can support improving developments in reading and writing, and we'll be showing an example of that later on, as well as a video which I'll share right at the end, which is based on one of our Nisai students' experiences with it. We are classed as a Centre of Excellence by the Inclusion Quality Mark, and I was fortunate enough in March of last year to be invited to the Global Inclusive Schools Forum held in Paris at UNESCO headquarters, where again we were talking about assistive tech and the part and the role that it plays within inclusive learning environments, and not so much about the buttons and the functionality, but how it makes the student feel, as well as strategies around the usage of that. So just to give a bit of background and research behind literacy-based assistive tech. So there's been a number of studies and research pieces that have been carried out on assistive tech. One of the key bits that has come back about is around improved spelling accuracy. So the fact that it's shown that word prediction can significantly reduce spelling errors, and I think it's really important to say that with WordQ, it doesn't give the answers to students. Students need to know what, or have an idea of what they want to say. It just supports in them getting it from the ideas in their head down in writing. It also improves and increases writing fluency, as well as reducing keystrokes. And I think anyone working in this arena will understand that the effort that goes in if you don't find writing easy. So by reducing the number of keystrokes, actually makes it easier for the learner. It takes that little bit less energy, but at the same time enhancing vocabulary use and bringing in words which they might not ordinarily use. But going back to well-being, it also improves confidence, and we've seen this with our with our users and with both children and adult users of WordQ, that they feel more confident, and then that allows them to be more independent within the classroom or the workplace. There needs to be a number of considerations for use, and one of the things that came out of the Global Inclusive Schools Forum was the need not just to put software in place and assistive tech in place, but also making sure that teachers, support staff have also been given the skills to be able to use it, be given the training to be able to implement it. And what is well recognized is that you can have the best bit of software in the world, but unless the right scaffolding's around, unless the right strategies are in place, the user and the learner won't get the most impact from it. What we have found, and one of the discussion points that came out from Paris last year, was around giving teachers more time in a classroom. So by being able to put a student on task, allowing them to work independently, and then providing them the opportunity to spend more time with other individuals within that class. Customization and differentiation of assistive tech is also going to be really important. So we don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach. One of the things which I'll show today will be how words and word predictions can be adapted based on the user. So we have 5 levels of vocabulary where a profile can be set up initially, but with pre-writing support, the complexity and number of words which are suggested can also be adapted as well. So I'll cover that off. Word prediction is one thing, and WordQ is very much known for that. But at the same time, it is also recognised that a combination of word prediction with other tools actually provides greater benefits to the user. So bringing in text to speech and speech to text provides different routes for learners to be able to use the software to get the most from it. And being able to assess and being able to understand the progress and the distance travelled of the student or of the user during their time of using WordQ is also really important. Understanding where that starting point was and being able to recognise how the software is benefiting them, whether it be in soft skills or whether it be academically, is always going to be really important. So there's a key bit that I see around personalising and normalising assistive tech. I think all too often there can be stigma surrounding it, and there's a number of ways in which we try and address that point in particular, because we recognise that if there's a stigma around using it, then students won't, and it will prove more difficult for the teaching staff to actually get the learner to use it. The example I tend to use around normalization of AT is the use of a pair of glasses. And the example I tend to go to is I was told that I should wear glasses at the age of 6. I'm now a 54-year-old glass wearer. Back in the 70s, children could be quite mean in a classroom, so I held off wearing them at school. And by the age of 12, I'd gone from only needing them for reading to needing to wear them all the time. I think it's quite well appreciated now that the wearing glasses is normal. They're seen as a fashion statement in many cases. And the use of software in the classroom or at home to be able to support in reading and writing, I think, and I would hope, will go the same way. And as an example of how that can be done, WordQ isn't just for those with special education needs or dyslexia or barriers to reading and writing. We see many users who haven't got English as a first language, and we're seeing that used in many parts of Asia, and also in particular Japan, where there's an appetite to build skills in English, but having the technology there to be able to support that is key. Children with high potential, so where they are incredibly able, they might use WordQ in a different way to someone who is working at a lower academic level. We've got it being used by children at school, but also adults in the workplace. So this is, and I think reinforces the point that WordQ and assistive technology in general isn't just for the here and now, it's there to be able to support throughout and for users to get the benefit of it. We talk about it being used to meet the need, not the diagnosis. And around that, what we mean by it is, yes, a child could be diagnosed as having dyslexia. However, if they're displaying behaviours and examples of low levels of literacy, then WordQ can work just as well. It can run and support multiple ability levels. It can improve attainment across all subject areas. And what we are finding, and whilst at the BET show a couple of weeks ago, there are challenges across all subject areas. We know what an important part literacy plays in that. So by improving the levels of reading and writing, we hope to see wider improvement across all subject areas. We need to make sure that it's user-friendly and easy to support, but by removing the stigma, we also, and the feedback from our users is that WordQ is discreet. It can just sit on the screen and do what it needs to do. The final point before I show you WordQ is just looking at the impact on the user. So, as I say, it's not just for special education needs. There are benefits irrespective of how we use it for individuals to use WordQ and assistive technology, and that will support in the removing of stigma. It does empower our learners, and on the Quillsoft website, and Kirstine, I can maybe share this presentation along with some other materials afterwards. We've got a video with feedback from students who have used WordQ and assistive tech to improve their learning experience. It allows them to become independent learners. Teachers can then invest a bit more time in the rest of the class, but also builds confidence and self-esteem for the user, improving well-being. As I say, with the reduction in keystrokes needed to bring up words, it uses less energy for the learner. So I'm going to come off this for a moment and just move on to a Word document so that you can see, let's open this. See WordQ in action. So if I can bring this menu over. So this is what you'll see of WordQ. There's a number of icons on there, but it's not too functionality heavy. We have always put a focus on keeping it simple, allowing the user to be able to work their way around it, and being able to toggle functionality on and off very, very easily. Now, if we go through the writing process, I'm going to start with the pre-writing element of it first. So if, for instance, we have a task is being set for a group of children that they want to talk about what they do at the weekend. So ThoughtQ is a research piece, and it also supports in providing examples of words based on certain topics. So within here, I'm going to write football. And you'll see the word prediction come up. I've currently got the speech bit turned off. So we turn that bit on, and we can search ThoughtQ for words around the discussion of football.
Charging. Cup final.
You'll obviously hear, hopefully, that WordQ is reading out the words in that topic list. Just going to turn that off for a moment. And if a student's thinking, okay, I want to write something to do with football, and what's goalkeeper got to do with it? They can highlight the word, click on the search. And what we'll see, just going to move that out of the way, is it will do a search under goalkeeper within the browser. Now, if they then want to find out a little bit more about it, they can see the content, but if they're finding reading difficult, they might want it read back to them. So with WordQ 6, they can highlight it,
The goalkeeper, sometimes written as goalkeeper, abbreviated as GK, keeper, keeps, or goalie, is a position in association football.
So I'm just going to pause that for one moment. Once they've read through it or heard that back and they realise that it is relevant to what they want to do, they can highlight it, copy it. I'm just going to bring this back over. And they can create a topic list called football. So I can drag that one word over if I want to do that. What we're going to do is import the words which we've just highlighted here. So they drop all the content in, but what WordQ will do is rather than importing all the words, it will take a series of words from that bit of information. And we can add all those words into the topic list. Now from here, they know where they want to start. So as they type,
DH.
now you'll see that each of the words are numbered. They can either select it by clicking on it,
Weekend, and
or they can select it by pressing the number. So in this case, if I hit 5,
I went to the football. At the weekend I went to the football.
Now there's ways in which this can be changed, so it can read it out word by word, or we can go back and do a proofreading part once the text is in there to hear the whole sentence back and the whole paragraph back. Now hopefully you saw a number of words which were coming up as a different colour. Now you'll see there goal, goalie and goalkeeper are in blue, as where government and good are all in black. That differentiates the words which are in that topic list, which then helps the student as they're writing their piece of work to see which words are relevant to the topic which they're talking about. So the rewrite of WordQ that's been done has been very much around looking at contextualized word prediction. In addition to the text to speech which comes back, there is also the option to do speech to text, and that can be achieved just by clicking the mic button. It uses built-in speech recognition by Microsoft, and that can be toggled on by pressing F8 to turn it off and turn it on and off, because what we find is some students will be quite happy doing the typing the vast majority of the time. They might only use it if they come across a word which they're struggling with. Now that was a bit of a whirlwind and quick run through. However, I just want to finish off, because I'm conscious of the time, just with a quick 3-minute video, which will give you an idea of how it can be used for one of our students that was and that is severely dyslexic. I'm just going to open up the PowerPoints again. I'll just run this for a couple of minutes just so that you can see it. Hopefully this will come through all clear at your end, but I'll just go quiet for a minute and just play this through for a couple of minutes.
This is an example of a student's essay. It shows typical dyslexic writing issues and how the student may use WordQ to write independently and with confidence.
That, then, edit, thanks, thanks, for, being, bringing, bearing, bringing, being, being. Held, here. Here it is. Please come here. Here. Today. Thanks for being here today. My enemy. Name. Name. Is. And. Any. Ni. Was. Will. Went. Were. Would. Would you like a candy? Would. Like to. Talk. To. You. About. The. School. Starts. System. System. And. The. Changes. That. I. Think. Next. New. Needs. Need. Need. To. We're going to school now. To. Be. Made. My name is and I would like to talk to you about the school system and the changes that I think need to be made.
So I'm just going to pause that and just finish off by saying I think what is quite clear there is that there is no lack of ability for this learner. They're incredibly articulate. They just struggle to get it down in writing, and that's where we feel that WordQ will fit. I know I've slightly overrun, so apologies for that, but hopefully as a quick run through of WordQ, that gives you an idea, and happy to provide any further information and answer any questions that there may be. So Kirstine, I will pass back to you.
Thanks, David. Yep, if anyone has any questions, please either unmute your mic or pop them into the chat pane. It's so nice to hear that word normalizing, being used more and more often. It's something I'm very passionate about myself. Colin, you've got your hand up. Please feel free to unmute.
Yeah, thanks, Kirstine and David. I was just going to ask David, you mentioned one of the points there about teacher and support staff confidence with the technology, feeling comfortable with themselves and going through a process. So I guess that will vary depending much on the experience and the skills, etc. But I was going to ask you, once you have a member of staff comfortable with the technology, do you have any thoughts on how they scaffold it for the child? And I know that's also very dependent on the child's skills or whatnot, and some children will pick up very quickly, but I just wondered if you had any general examples of good practice for introducing it for the child once the member of staff does feel comfortable. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. Thanks for the question. I think you're right. It's always going to be difficult because every child's different. I think ultimately what we'd look at is possibly start it off on small tasks. One of the examples, and it was a really interesting one, the video that we've got on the website was around making it available to everyone. So it's a case study from, excuse me, from a school in Edmonton, where the teacher put it in place for every child in the class. What that then did was it allowed students to choose whether or not they wanted to use it. The 3 who were going to used it in one way, but what we found was that and when given the choice, other students found different ways in which they could use it. So I think as a strategy, probably start off with a smaller piece of work first. I think with that, and it could just be in just leaving them to play with it. There are opportunities to create sentences just by pressing the numbers and choosing the words from the prediction. So I think keeping it simple is always going to be really good. I think one of the other bits which I didn't cover, but which is included, is that WordQ collects and makes a list of words which are commonly spelt wrong. So being able to support with that as well can be a good way to start engaging with the student and with the user.
Thanks, David. There's just a couple of questions there coming in about pricing. So I've popped the link in for the website, and if anybody's looked, they'll see that a price in Canadian dollars of $119. So I know you're expecting this.
No, absolutely. So we're in discussion. We're making a couple of changes on the pricing that are going to be coming through. Realistically, if you go on the website, you can buy a single user license for 119 Canadian dollars. It works out current exchange rate because there's a few things going on commercially and politically with things that are affecting the Canadian dollar. So it's coming back at about £67 per license if bought through the website. We do offer various licenses, so individual, volume, school-wide licenses as well, which brings that unit cost down significantly. There is a crossover point. I think if there's a school requiring anything more than about 60 licenses, then it makes sense to go for a school-wide, where the unit price then comes down to around about £4 a license. So I think what that then allows for is, and we'll all see it, we'll have an idea of a number of children who will need it, but then it's only when things become available that actually you identify students who might have a need, maybe lesser, but who could still benefit from it. So school-wide licensing, and any questions about licensing I can get in, I can sort out for you if anybody gets in touch. And we can also provide free trials as well if people want to look at it.
That's great, thank you. If you're going to share your slides, David, if you just maybe make sure that your contact details are on them, that would be great. And what we'll do is we'll upload your slides onto the page with the recording. We'll be able to do that. So if you just send those through to me afterwards. Somebody had asked there about the purchasing, about an online login, but it's, if you want to explain, it's not, doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. So we have WordQ available for Windows, Mac, and Chromebooks, as well as iPads. iPad sales all go through the Apple Store, so we have no control over that. It's slightly different. It works more as a text editor rather than sitting over documents like Word. The Chromebook version is slightly different again, in the sense that it's accessed via so you need a Google associated email address or domain that is accessed through a browser. So that's more like logging on, but you still have a local install. But around that, the Mac and the Windows versions are all downloaded to the local machine. It works both on and offline. I think and with the focus on GDPR, data privacy, and transfer of information, I can confirm that we don't take user information. We don't look at usage statistics. We quite often get asked, well, we'd like reporting on how students are using it and what progress is being made on it. But realistically, to do that, we'd have to be taking data from the user. We'd rather, and I think it's been agreed by many of our customers, that they'd rather have the anonymity of it, have a data privacy rather than having student data going through. Especially on sort of volume licenses within schools, what we're able to do is set up a license that's based on a generic email address. that can then be used. So we'd normally recommend it would be WordQ at such and such, and then that way there's no user data coming through.
She's just saying there, can you just clarify that Windows is a download and install? It still only works with Wi-Fi. No, am I right in saying no, it will work offline as well?
Once it's installed, it does
Yeah.
work offline. That's the same for the Windows version as it is for the Chromebook version. So the way that the Chromebook version works is that it's run as a progressive web app. So it's not in a live browser. It takes the information out, works in our own environment, but you can pull the documents from the Google Drive. But once it's in there, students can keep working on it. So if the internet drops out, they'll still have access to WordQ. They just won't be able to save it back to their Google Drive.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that your contact details are available. Is that?
Yep, that's no problem at all.
Great. All right. Well, I think that was pretty successful. I think people are as impressed as we are with it as a tool. It's, it's simple in its design, and I think it's very robust in what it does as well. So and cheap. It's it is a very reasonable option. Very reasonable option, particularly for home use as well. If people are looking at that. So thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you very much, David, for your time. And
thanks for the invite.
as I say, the recording will be available shortly, and then we'll upload your slides as well.
Brilliant.
Great. Have a good evening, everybody. Thanks very much. We'll see you in a couple of weeks for our next webinar.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.